for those of you that are, college radio DJs or aspire to be so, enjoy that time in college. You're going to have a lot of freedom and a lot of fun to do some things that you won't otherwise probably if you move on to the corporate side of things. So, I no doubt miss my 4-hour metal show that I got to do on a Tuesday night because I'll probably never have that again on the commercial side of things. I've got a 2-hour show now, which is almost unheard of, but it is absolutely unheard of to have 4 hours, let alone 7 hours of programming. So RSU and college radio was really kind to me. I got to do a lot of really fun and good things. So I would encourage anybody, if you want to get into broadcasting, this is not me, saying anything bad about like a broadcasting school, like a 10-month or a 1-year program, but I would highly encourage anybody to go to a college that has a radio station in it, a student-run radio station, and get your experience and do things that way. You'll come across it more honestly, I think, in the long run, and you'll get more out of it, really. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that I've seen that have come from broadcasting schools, 10-month, 1-year programs that are just like they're deer in headlights by the time they can't hit the ground running like they probably should when they get into commercial radio. Whereas I see a higher success rate with people who actually went through a college radio program. So I'm all for it, man.
Sweet. Do you see a lot of difference in programming from the college side versus the commercial? I mean, when you did your radio show,
I can only speak from where I came from, and my college had its own like indie rock format, indie and alternative rock, and there was a lot of specialty shows, which I really hope that's kind of where radio is going to move, going forward. There was a punk rock show, there was a metal show, there was a rockabilly and a reggae show. Yeah. So that's what our Rogers State University provided. Again, a regular format that had specialty shows, as an aside. You don't see a lot of that on the commercial side of things more times than not. It's going to be just like speaking in regards to a typical rock station, it's just that's that rock format and that's it. You might get like a Lou Brutus hard drive or like a Full Metal Jackie or something that's been piped in. But yeah, the format pretty much is solid and it's set. So with college radio, you get a little bit more freedom in that regard too. So not only in what the regular format is, but also like the type of programming you can feature on it. So
did you feature a lot of like unknown metal bands, or did you do the more
for
commercial
me personally
stuff?
I did some of the commercial stuff. My rule of thumb is if you hear it on normal commercial radio, you're not going to hear it on my show. So if somebody did ask me for Metallica, say the most famous metal band that exists, if you asked me for Metallica and told me you wanted to hear Enter Sandman, I'd tell you to go take a flying leap into a tub of it's just like you're crazy. There's no way I'm going to do that.
Play Trapped Under Ice.
Right, yeah, exactly. That would be something that came off of the first couple of albums, something underground that you don't really hear, or even like Four Horsemen. You hear that on commercial radio now, so I have to be kind of careful. So then I'd start dipping into some of the live stuff, like the Binge and Purge box set from Metallica is amazing, by the way, and there's some really great stuff on there. So I'd get like the live version of Creeping Death, and I would play that if somebody asked me for Metallica. But yeah, my rule of thumb has always been with like the type of music that I like to cater to and like what I'm into is extreme and underground. And again, if it's you ask me for a Slipknot song, I'm not going to play All Hope Is Gone. I'm going to play the Heretic Anthem. Again, stuff that you're not typically going to hear. And I really wish that more specialty shows would do stuff like that, because why do we need to hear Enter Sandman again? It gets plenty of airplay on its own.
Right.
Feature things that give people a reason to want to tune in and be interested and come back.
So how do you feel? So you kind of touched on how you think radio should be going towards these specialty programs. How do you feel about how like the internet and the streaming sites like the Pandoras and the Spotifys has affected terrestrial radio?
It has no doubt affected, just because the audience has become much more fragmented. Whereas in the 80s into the mid to late 90s, your option was to turn on your radio and you either could use your CD player or your tape deck. Those three options: CD, tape, FM radio, or God forbid you turned into AM radio. So those were the only options you had. Now you've got your cell phone, which can have MP3s on it, or iPods and Pandoras and things like that. So it has fragmented the audience. The one thing I think that FM radio has working for it is that every car that's manufactured has an FM radio to it. Yeah. So it's a level of convenience, and it's a level of, I guess you could say, accessibility. So FM radio will always have that working for it, but I think that we do have to be a little bit more diligent on radio side about our programming and not make it to where it's so blasé or so boring or you're hearing the same thing over and over again, and give people a reason to tune in and want to listen to the radio. And that's what I try to do with my programming. Again, I want to supply you with something that you haven't heard before, something that's going to pique your interest, something that, for music nerds even, I mean, not everybody is into metal the way that I'm into metal, but there are people that are. So, and metal fans, luckily for me, are some of the more passionate and more involved fans.
Yep.
So they will tune in at a certain time on a certain night to hear something, different, and that's their own. But also, it might be new or different for them, So, again, they know that they're going to tune into, the Meltdown and hear good metal music.
Yes.
And they're going to hear, like, an Iron Maiden, or they're going to hear, a Soulfly or a Pantera. But I'm also going to bring you a band that you probably haven't heard before, too, because that's what my job is, dude, is to go find that music,
Right.
And play the underground stuff and the stuff that you don't ever hear.
Well, speaking of metal fans, how do you find that metal fans are a different breed of person? How would you describe a metal? Because it's been my personal observations. It seems like metal fans tend to be a little bit more down to earth and a little bit more respectable.
There's that, but a good way for me to put it would be with my girlfriend Raina. I took her to her very first local death metal show. Now, understand, Raina wasn't aware of who I was, what I did, and what I was into. She just, found out, soon enough that I was a metalhead. She doesn't like metal in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So she's into hip hop and pop and so some country music. So I took her to this death metal show, and of course, like a lot of people, the first thing that people think when they see a metal guy, all dressed in black, piercings, tattoos, chains, and whatever else, that's an intimidating thing for a normal person. And so she is a normal person at a death metal show, and she's looking around. She's got the deer in the headlight look, and like, oh my God, all these guys are scary looking. I'm telling you, these are some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. Sure enough, she starts talking to a few of them, talks Harry Potter with one guy, and we talk Game of Thrones with it, and pretty soon she comes up and she's like, you know what? I'm not trying to be mean, but I think most metalheads are nerds. And I'm like, that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely fair. Most metalheads are total nerdy dudes.
Yeah.
They're big, long hair, and they're big beard, and they're scary, but you go up there and you talk to them, and they'll rap with you about Harry Potter or Star Trek or Star Wars or any other kind of nerd thing.
As a young teenager, they played Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, the imagery that kind of gets saddled up with metal, like whether it's satanic or otherwise, scary stuff, horror stuff. It's all kind of be taken with a grain of salt. I mean, I don't know that I've met very many, if any, like legitimate satanic metalheads. You know what I mean?
I don't think I've ever.
They might have a pentagram on their shirt, but like the last thing that they would do would be actually worshiping Satan or sacrificing a cat at an altar. You know what I mean? That's not something that's real. I mean, not to us anyway. Not to us as metalheads. Again, do we cater to the things that are darker and kind of scary and that are, even venture to say, like, anti-religious? Yeah, probably, but that it's not anything that anybody takes, like, to any serious degree. I mean, we are serious about the music, but not about the negative things that a lot of people attach to it. Yeah, most metalheads are really, really nice dudes.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So I'm a classical music professor at OU and a metalhead, and
which I would say classical music was just metal invented before like distortion,
right?
But
I created a metal course, and one of the things that I wanted to get across, not just so people could understand the genre honestly, but especially for any like millennial metal fans that I would have in the course, is just like, hey, there's a whole 2 generations now of legacy bands that you need to know about.
Right.
And do you ever feel like when you program your show that's part of your...
I kind of feel obligated to do that?
Yeah.
I would say like a Maiden or a Sabbath would be one of those legacy bands that I feel like, people need to make sure that they're aware of or know, the Panteras, the Soulflies, or the Sepulturas, So there are some legacy bands that I do want to do stuff like that with, but I think it's also like, really important that you kind of consider your audience and make it a strong effort to find what that crossover is going to be. You know what I mean? So the younger audience, what is it that they're listening to, and try to find something that's close to or near that, so that you do draw them over into that. Because that's what always been so fun for me about metal, is that because there's so much of it, because there's so many subgenres, and a lot of it exists, that you're never going to run out of things to look at or find or listen to. So whereas I might be listening to one band and then I hear another band, like pretty soon it trails off, and you guys have seen seen it. Discographies are huge on some of these bands that you've never heard of, and there's so much to go back and like listen to and check out. So that's what I always want to try and do is, again, find that crossover, because like somebody may not like a Dying Fetus. It's too heavy for them or whatever else. So you find like what's not as heavy as Dying Fetus, but almost kind of like it and still got a groove to it.
Like
and eventually they will. Sure. Well, Suffocation would still be like along those lines. But like a good stepping stone to something like Suffocation or Dying Fetus or Cannibal Corpse might be a Lamb of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or like taking another step down. So like, again, I've always watched metalheads when they start, they always inevitably go heavier.
Oh yeah.
And become more accepting of heavier brands of music. So you might start off a power metal guy or a thrash metal guy, but inevitably at some point you're going to start listening to death metal. You know what I mean? It's just finding that one death metal band or that band that kind of crosses over into death metal that's got to kind of like grab you, and
You're
get a hold
a
of
death metal fan, you just don't know it yet.
Right. I think I would challenge anybody who like legitimately likes metal. Like if you're a Five Finger Death Punch fan, I can turn you into a death metal fan. You watch, I'll do it.
You've already
and I've done it
taken the
before.
gateway
Yeah,
drug.
no. I have a friend of mine that visits me over there at the station every now and then, and his favorite bands are like Chevelle and things like that. And sure enough, I had him listening to Polish death metal. I got him into Vader. You know what I mean? I just had to find that one groovy track and that one thing that kind of grabbed him.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he's coming over. He's like, "Dude, have you heard of this band?" I was like, "Well, of course I have." It's like, "Man, these guys are amazing." And one of his hang-ups with death metal was the lyrical content. Like, because Cannibal Corpse is kind of like the perennial death metal band that everybody mentions, and the lyrical content is scary and it's brutal and it's gross and whatever. But you have to understand context, like they think that because these guys are singing about stuff like that's what they're like. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. The whole Cannibal Corpse formula, and let's explain first that Cannibal Corpse actually literally means zombie, if you think about it. But they're horror fans. They love horror stuff, so it's Cannibal Corpse is a horror movie in music form.
Yep.
So that's what they're singing about. They're singing about what you would see in a horror film. And when you think about it like that, it doesn't seem as bad. Right. But there's always that initial immediate apprehension that everybody attaches to, or like, they don't, oh my God, scary. He said some really gross stuff. I mean, like, well, you watch really gross. Have you ever saw Saw?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, there's or Human Centipede. Everybody's seen that movie,
We watched that during rehearsal once.
All right, well, there you go. I mean, so imagine if you wrote a song about Human Centipede.
Yep.
What would the lyrical content consist of?
Yep.
There you go. That's it. So that's the best way that I could ever describe it to anybody. But yeah, I mean, if you're a metalhead of any sort right now, I'll get you into death metal. Trust me. I may not get you into grindcore. That's a little bit of a tougher sell, but I definitely get you into death metal.
All right. Well, it's been great talking with you, Turbo.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.